You're listening to the Chopped Podcast, episode number 117. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Chopped Podcast. Today is another one of those exciting episodes because we are recording Blog Talk. I am here with Trevor Depth, and he is of the site. He is of the site. Show me the yummy.
Did you say shite?
I did say shite. What's wrong with me?
I love it.
I'm working on alternative languages today, so. Trevor, I was trying to introduce you, so let me get back to that.
I'm sorry.
You're with the site Show Me the Yummy that obviously your wife does that primarily, but I know you work with her on it as well, and also the Blog Village. So welcome, Trevor.
Welcome. Hello. Thank you. Blog Talk number 4. We still haven't gotten that jingle. We need to get on that. You and I were supposed to record something.
Yes.
You know, the Blog Talk is well, we'll do it offline, but we need to get that eventually.
We are going to get it. Everybody
deserves
stay
a
tuned.
jingle. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Blog Talk number 4. First one of 2017.
I know. That's huge right there.
Huge.
Huge.
Happy New Year.
It's huge. Yes. Happy New Year to you as well. I know. I don't know about you, but I hit this new year running and I'm ready to go. What about you?
Oh, yeah. I know. Yes. We've been doing tons of stuff. It's been very busy. And so feel really good about the start to 2017. Absolutely.
I was going to say your intro is getting longer and longer because, not only do you have your sites, but now you're doing these video workshops and in person and online. So you're a busy man.
I'm going to need a good solid 2 to 3 minutes at the beginning here for a proper introduction.
Not just for the intro, but for your ego as well. No, I'm kidding.
Right. That'll be 5 or 6 minutes. No.
You're just the nicest. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
You're
so
the nicest.
Why don't we get into a little bit about what Blog Talk is? You do such a good job. Do you want to explain it to everybody?
Yeah. Blog Talk is a chance for Marley and I to sort of take some questions, hot topics that we see out there in the blogging world and answer the questions or put some sense to some things that are being discussed, at least our perspectives and point of view, and just try and help people make sense of this whole blogging world.
Because think about when you're working at a job, you have colleagues and you're standing around the coffee machine and you're talking and how do you do this? How do you do that? And we don't really have that in food blogging as much unless you go to a conference on a regular basis. So I kind of look at this as Blog Talk as, we're standing around the water cooler, sharing ideas, answering questions. How do we do things? And maybe it helps everybody. I don't know.
It's Blog Talk, Coffee Talk. That's what we're doing. That was my.
I like it.
You can edit that later.
Call me, Trevor. We'll talk.
You went like what's the rabbit? You went, or what's the guy, the Wascally Rabbit? You went. I was going Saturday Night Live.
Fudd.
Yeah, you went Elmer Fudd. I think I was going like Brooklyn,
New York,
poor Brooklyn, New York accent, very offensive and horrible to people who are actually from there. I apologize. Anyway, but yes, that's what we're doing. It's kind of water cooler coffee talk.
Yeah, that's right. And I personally get a lot of value out of this kind of thing just because I can't tell you how many times, you were banging your head up against the wall trying to figure something out. And I think just, to be able to talk things out with other people is so helpful.
Sometimes actually just saying it out loud helps make sense of
true.
things, I find. Yeah. I don't need the other person to actually speak. I just need to say it out loud. And then I'm like, yeah, okay, never mind. Go away. Yeah. Jennifer loves it when I do that.
Yeah. Oh, does she? Yeah. If I were her, I would stand there and go, hey, I was very happy to help you.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happens.
But I can't tell you how many times I've been in a situation where I'm mulling something, I'm ruminating on it, I can't figure it out, and I'll just say it out loud to Sean, and it's like you say, it's like the answer comes to me just by speaking the words.
Mm-hmm. Just don't do that when you're in a coffee shop on your own. Then people look at you. Weird.
Especially if you get excited when you figure it out, because then people will be like, what's wrong with her?
Yeah, you'll get kicked out. So don't do that.
For sure. Just listen to us. Yeah, talk it out in the car.
That's what we're here for.
That's exactly what we're here for. So each month, our goal is to go over a few questions that we know food bloggers are going through. It's either because it's in the groups that we're in, we're seeing the questions that are going on, or people are emailing us or asking us questions on social media. So we kind of have a good idea of the kinds of questions that are going on. And then we answer it from our perspectives. And it doesn't necessarily mean that those are the only perspectives out there, but it's at least something to go on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get started because I think we've got a couple of some really good questions to go into here. And the very first one is this: what type of recipe plugin do you use?
Good question.
Why don't you start
Good
with explaining recipe plugins?
Yeah, sure. So a recipe plugin for a food blogger is just a plugin that you'll install on something like a WordPress that allows you to enter in your ingredients and instructions, and it usually gives you different areas for the prep and the actual cooking, and depending on the plugin can let you put different headers in there to make it really clear when it's creating the recipe, and then wherever you insert that into your post, it formats it, and some plugins let you customize that format and make it easier for your reader to view it, print it. Some can let you save it. There's all sorts of different functionalities between different plugins out there, but it's a kind of a cornerstone for food bloggers, especially because it also provides a really important element, which is structured data within your pages, which is how Google reads it to say, hey, this is a recipe, and that's what makes that magic little photo show up in Google search results when you're looking at a recipe. And so it's really important to make sure you're using some plugin, regardless.
Also on Pinterest, I believe your recipe can pull up if you use a recipe schema like a plugin too.
Yeah, that structured data can be used by a lot of different things. It can be used by Pinterest. It can be used by there's apps that use that recipe data for people on their phone to add a recipe. So it just reads that, so it gets all the ingredients, the cooking time, all that stuff.
Now, before we get into plugins, I have a question for you, Trevor. I think I heard somebody once say that you actually don't have to have a recipe plugin. You can memorize the HTML or have it handy. If you want to manually put all that information into the HTML, that information is out there. In fact, I can provide a link to it. All the schema that Google is looking for each particular field. You could do it manually, but I think it would be a lot of work.
Yeah, boy, why would you? What a nightmare. I mean, yes, absolutely. Yes. You can do it manually. Sure. All it is it's code, it's HTML code that you're putting into your site. Now, the reason why I would say not to do that is because things change, right?
Yes.
And for example, I mean, I don't know if we'll go this deep, but there's Google's new preferred way of getting structured data is through something called JSON LD. So what JSON LD is it's just a way of trying to think of an easy way to explain this. It's just another way of consolidating that information into into a variable in a piece of script on your site, so that it's easier for Google to read it. It's more structured. It's their preferred new method. Now, if you had hand coded all of your recipes prior.
Oh my goodness.
And then suddenly you've got 500 recipes and they say, hey, we're doing this. If you're using a plugin, that plugin author is able to say, oh, okay, hold on. Now I will update my plugin to account for Google's new preference for JSON LD. And magically all 500 of your recipes are done. Whereas if you're manually doing that, that would be a really unpleasant project to have to go through.
That radical manual person who's doing it manually that just feels like they don't need another plugin. They will be pulling their hair out when that happens. Yes.
You really would, or you'd be paying somebody a good amount of money to do it. So, I think recipe plugins is one of those places where I wouldn't say to ditch, or, if someone builds you a custom plugin, that's fine. But the idea is that as you are entering that recipe data in, you want it stored in some structured way within your website, so that a plugin or you have access to it to change how it's displayed, because things change.
Yes, and there are some recipe plugins that have some very nice features to them. For example, I'm aware of some that actually will create a shopping list for your, if the person likes your recipe, you can help create a shopping list for that recipe.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, a shopping list. There's ones that let you meal plan, that let your users create their own personalized meal plan and give them a shopping list. There's ones that automatically create nutrition labels based on the recipes you're putting in and the ingredients and the quantities. So yeah, there's a ton of different functionality.
Excellent. So should we start talking about specific recipe plugins?
We can.
Yes, I think that would be helpful for everybody. Now, I will confess on our end, Sean has designed for me a specific recipe plugin. So I'm kind of spoiled in that regard because I don't have to, mess with trying to figure out which one I use.
Oh yeah, you have a web designer as a husband.
Yeah.
It's convenient.
Yes, very, very convenient.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll throw out some of the ones that I'm sure people have heard of. There's what is it? Oh man, I can't even think of the name.
Easy Recipe.
Easy Recipe. Easy Recipe. Thank you. Yes, Easy Recipe. That was one that was around for a long time, and it kind of got dormant in terms of its support. I've heard rumors that they're starting to work on it again. But for instance, JSON LD was something that plugin was not doing. But they might be updating that. So, I guess you can do some research there to find out about that. But if you already have it, you can definitely see what their plan is and contact them, because apparently they're back on the saddle. They're back on the saddle. Is that the phrase?
I think that works. Yeah.
Yeah, they're back on the saddle. Yeah, we're going to go with that. So that's one. We used to use that. We've actually moved plugins now.
Really?
To the developer they make two plugins. One's called WP Recipe Maker.
Yes.
And then they have another plugin called WP Ultimate Recipe. And WP Recipe Maker is the newer development effort by them. They're also still supporting and developing on Ultimate Recipe, but they just have some specific features that they both offer. But we upgraded to Ultimate Recipe. And I personally like that plugin because of the structure in which they store all of the data. So all of your recipe ingredients and the instructions are all stored in the database, versus something like an Easy Recipe that was all just stored as HTML. So the plugin would sort of create and generate HTML on your page, and that's how the plugin stored the information, which I don't like as much from a developer standpoint. I kind of like.
Why do you not like that as much?
It's just not as clean, and it's not as portable. If we wanted to, maybe let's say we wanted to do our own recipe plugin, all of the information that we've entered is stored in our database in a really structured way. Whereas if we were transitioning now, let's say from something like an Easy Recipe, what you're really doing is you're sort of just parsing through HTML to try and find the different parts of it, which is just not. Right. In the development world, you wouldn't look at that as a clean way of doing things. So I like the development standards that the developer behind WP Recipe Maker and WP Ultimate Recipe are much more standardized to how WordPress wants you to build plugins, for example.
I see.
So that's why
I think I remember reading in the Blog Village that you, in addition to having the recipe, you use your recipe plugin to kind of create, I don't know, am I going to say this right? Not categories, but kind of like a recipe index.
Yeah, that's actually a different plugin that we use.
Is it? Okay.
But it's so Ultimate Recipe, at least. I'm not sure about WP Recipe Maker. They do have a version of that filtering. I just like the version that we use better. It's called Search and Filter Pro is the plugin that we use. And I just really like the way that it shows results, that it displays, that as people are narrowing things down, I like the user interface that they present better. So we stuck with that. But yeah, that's also something that we use with our recipes.
So let's go back to the recipe plugin, because I think there's some important questions that people need to be asking no matter what plugin they choose. I think they need to decide whether they want to, are they going to be providing nutritional information? And is that something that their recipe plugin will allow them to display?
Yep. That's definitely, I think that you're right. I think there's a whole list. Come up with whatever is important to you, and then you need to go into any plugin and say, does this meet all of my needs? And that's definitely one. Nutritional information, things like, do you want people to be able to create a shopping list? Is that important to you? Meal plan, is that important to you? What sort of pre-built templates do they have for you if that's
Yes.
important, that you don't want to get in there and try and mess around with that. Yeah, that's definitely, those are sort of, I would call those user experience UX type features that you want to look out for. You definitely also want to look out for what we talked about, which is having JSON LD functionality where they will, because that is ultimately very likely going to be where people move to. Everyone's not completely there. Pinterest, for example, doesn't read JSON LD yet, or at least the last time I checked. That could have changed, but
Right.
so they were still doing it via XML, and so now Google has said, no, we prefer JSON LD. So I'm assuming Pinterest will change, hopefully. But right now, you want a plugin that can serve both, if possible.
Excellent. I'm if anybody's out there scratching their head, I am writing this stuff down, and we'll put this information on the show notes page. So if you're curious about JSON LD and want to learn more about that, we'll have a link for you.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree with you, Trevor. I think you just need, look through a few sites and see which plugins that you like the most. That's probably a great way if you don't have your own figured out yet, and just write down the things that you like about those, and then look for those features. For example, you want a photo, you want to be able to print the recipe. Those are some kind of standard things that will really help your users. So kind of make sure you find a plugin with those features.
And I feel like it's one of those arenas that there's a lot of growth going on right now. I know there's other people developing recipe plugins that are releasing them. And, what I would say is ignore the marketing hype. Know what the actual core, this is the best recipe plugin ever. It's going to be so much better. That's all great. That's just marketing. Get down to okay, does it do everything I need it to do? Because that's really what's going to be important. And then what's the price point for it? Because, like WP Recipe Maker and WP Ultimate Recipe, those aren't free plugins. So, they might have a free version for Recipe Maker. I'm not sure. But, so determine what makes sense for your budget too.
Exactly. And know that I would probably want to look at reviews. I know what other food bloggers are saying about it. I just think that's really important, because if you've seen a lot of people who are complaining about it, that may be that's a pretty good sign to stay away from it.
Yeah. And also, like we talked about with Easy Recipe, which they may be coming out of this, but watch to see when's the last time that plugin was updated.
Yeah.
Are they actively developing it? Contact support, throw an email out, see how long it takes you to get a response. Those kinds of things where you don't think about them when you're just installing it, but it might become important down the road, and you want to know that someone's going to be there to fix something. If there's let's say a theme incompatibility or WordPress updates and it breaks your recipe plugin, you're going to want to be able to contact somebody about that.
That's exactly right. And I think also for me, I think a criteria I'd be looking for is that they've been around, at least like you're saying, there's a lot of growth. I translate that to mean that there's people moving in and out of this industry every day, it seems like. And so, I know a lot of people were on Ziplist for a while. I think they had a recipe, and then they stopped supporting their recipe plugin, and all those people had to figure out, what am I going to do now with all my recipes? I think they did kind of create a way to transfer them over to a different plugin, but still, there was a little bit of stress in the industry for a while.
Yeah, and my recommendation would be, if someone's coming out with a plugin and it's brand new, that's not personally because this is our business and our full-time business. That's not when I would jump on to that new plugin. I would give them a few months, because there are always bugs, there's always issues. And, if you're talking about something, especially if you're listening and you're a full-time blogger and the income is important to you, I would not be an early adopter on a recipe plugin. My personal recommendation.
Do not be an early adopter on a recipe plugin. You heard it first here on Blog Talk.
Yeah. It's just such an important part of a food blog that it's like, if the recipe's not working, that's going to be not cool. Okay. Not cool.
I think it's interesting. I always think, I look at a question and I'll think, we'll just spend a couple of minutes on that. And look how much we can, go on about a recipe plugin. Who knew?
I can talk about recipe plugins for hours. That's frightening.
We should call it blog nerd talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. I like this next question because it's actually very applicable to what we're talking about. And that is, do you use nutritional information in your recipes? If so, how do you put those together? I love this question because, well, we actually do, our plugin does allow us to put nutritional information. And I have really struggled with finding good sources to do that. Although I hear a lot of people say MyFitnessPal is their way of including nutritional information.
Yeah,
Do you all do that?
So occasionally we will put nutrition information on a recipe. Largely we do not. And that's just a choice that everybody has to make. And it obviously is going to depend on what type of blog you have too. If your blog is very health conscious, that might be much more important to you than it maybe is to us. But on some recipes, we definitely throw that in there. MyFitnessPal is one of those sources that you can go to. There are so many of them that, and honestly, we don't include them that much also because we're not nutritional experts by any means. And we don't really like to put that out there to say, hey, here's exactly what that is, because, that's just not our thing. I will take a moment to mention there is an incorrect, because when you're looking at structured data, if you're looking in like Google's structured data testing tool, it'll say, oh, it's, missing nutritional data. And I've heard people say that, oh, you have to have nutritional data or you're not going to rank in the little tray that shows images at the top on mobile, and you won't get search engine ranking. And that is not true. We do not put nutritional data in pretty much any of our recipes, and we show up in those trays all the time. And we have all sorts of stuff that does really well on Google. And so don't think you need to do it. It's a choice for your blog that you get to make.
Okay, clarify the tray for me again. Are you talking about like when you go, like let's say I search for chocolate covered peanut butter balls, and the tray is the one that kind of is like a highlighted recipe? There's images, and you can sort of swipe through them. It's at the very top before any of the other results. Yes. Okay.
So it's those images.
Right.
I've heard people say you have to have nutritional data or you'll never get in there, and that's not true. I agree. It's just nutritional info is just one thing that Google looks at, and it's not the most important thing. There's so many other factors that are more important than that.
Now, isn't it kind of cool though when you do a search like that and your recipe shows up in the tray then?
Oh yeah. Well, and the cool thing about that tray is that you can actually rank in a way higher than things that rank higher. The first result is not always necessarily the first image in that tray. So you can get into that tray and not necessarily be the first result, which has an even higher conversion if you're in that tray. So that's good.
I feel really cool because I didn't know what it was called before. Now I know I can call it the tray. I feel really smart.
It's the tray. Yeah, there you go.
It's the tray. Yes. So I'm with you. I don't put nutritional information on my recipes either. And there are several recipes for which we show up in the tray, and I love it every time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to vary from blog to blog. If it's something that, your readers are going to find really valuable or that they're requesting regularly, then it's definitely something to look at. And that can be one of those things that you can get out of a recipe plugin, or you can do it entirely separately and just generate one of those labels from some of those sites.
Excellent. But if you are one of those people and you really want to include nutritional information in your recipes, but you don't know how to do that, I have a list of sources that I will put together and I'll put on the show notes page. So just head over there and you can just pick from them. I think there's a little bit of elbow grease involved, finding the one that works best for you, but a lot of them will produce a nice little graphic image that you can also put on your site, or you can put it in your own recipe plugin for the nutritional information. I think that probably is better to have the data in your recipe plugin because that will probably show up on things like MyFitnessPal and things like that.
Well, and if you have a recipe plugin that allows you to adjust serving size, then that's even more important because it'll adjust the nutritional information based on how many
number of calories,
servings you're making. Yes, depending on the recipe. Yes, depending on what the recipe is.
So I think what we're saying here is if your goal is to include nutritional information and you're going to go to the trouble to get that and put it together for your recipes, you might as well put it into your recipe plugin. It just makes sense.
Yep, it just makes sense.
We're all for ownership of your own stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I want to take a little side route. I know this wasn't on our list of questions, Trevor, but you did talk about your the plugin that you use for your recipe index, and it seems like that's kind of a cool thing. Some sites don't have, like we don't have a recipe index, but I have to admit I do like going to sites that have that. Can you talk a little bit about what you do on Show Me the Yummy?
Yeah. So on Show Me the Yummy, we've done a couple things. So we have a plugin called Search and Filter Pro. And what that allows you to do is look at this is going to get a little technical. So don't
Okay.
let your eyes gloss over. Just stay with me.
It's already
It'll all make
glossy.
sense.
It's too late.
It's okay. It's okay. So a Search and Filter Pro, Search and Filter Pro, and what that is allows you to do is look at different aspects, different metadata that you have stored for your posts. And in our case, we do that through another plugin called, I'm not exactly sure the name of it. It's custom taxonomies is what it allows you to create. And what a taxonomy is, don't, worry. It's just a way of categorizing your posts similar to categories. Now, with Search and Filter Pro, you can't search on multiple categories, but you can on taxonomies. So all we've done is we create these taxonomies using that custom taxonomy plugin, which I'll make sure I give to Marley and she can put on the show notes.
Awesome.
And we create things like meal type. Let's say it's dinner, breakfast, lunch, and then we do something like maybe season. So spring, fall, summer, winter. And we'll do something like occasion, and that could be Super Bowl, whatever. We have these different taxonomies. And then with every post, just like you add a category to your post, you can say, oh, this recipe should go under dinner and lunch. And this recipe should go under dessert. And this recipe should go also under a Super Bowl recipe, and it's a lunch, or, let's say a Super Bowl recipe, it's an appetizer, and it's one bowl. Yeah, exactly. And if you want, you can go to showmetheyummy.com and look at the recipe search page. That'll probably be the most sense of all this. And then what you can do is you can search on multiple categories or multiple taxonomies. So I can say, I want a dinner that's one bowl that's vegetarian. And that will look at all of our recipes and then just really quickly for our readers, show them everything that's one bowl that's vegetarian that they can have for dinner. And people love it because it allows you to combine things instead of saying, oh, I want to look at dinner and then having to scroll through all the dinners and try and figure out, which ones of these are gluten-free and which ones of these are, you can create the ability for people to add those multiple pieces of metadata that they can search on for one recipe. And it looks really nice. And just you click on things and it narrows it down. You can click on something else and it narrows it down. And it kind of gives you a really easy way to go through hundreds and hundreds of recipes.
So two things
Did
I
that
want to say
make
about
sense?
that. Yes, it
Yeah.
makes all kinds of sense. I love it. And I bet that improves your bounce rate, I'm sure, right?
I mean, I think I don't know if it increases our bounce rate per se from someone coming in from some search engine, but I will say that for the people that do find it, I think it is definitely a retention factor to say, oh, I'll come back here because it's so easy. If I want a quick dinner that's seasonal for fall, I can come in here and I can do it. Or if I want crockpot recipes that I can have for lunch or a crockpot appetizer, you can mix and match these things without having to search through the site for it and just try and find it. Yeah.
That's really nice. And the other thing I was thinking of is it helps you as Jennifer, as the person who's like, let's say you're writing a post and it's on appetizers because Super Bowl's on the horizon, then, you could say, hey, you're interested in more Super Bowl recipes, and you could create a link and people, and direct people to the page that you created, right? Is that, am I wrong here?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
It's linkable. So,
That's nice.
We'll actually have readers contact us sometimes to say, do you have any good crockpot dinner recipes that are vegetarian? We can go into our search, punch those things in, and then just send them that exact link. And then they instantly have access to all the recipes that match what they're looking for.
And just takes a couple of seconds and you've got it.
Yeah. Now I will say that process did mean going through every single one of our recipes and then adding those taxonomies for each one to say what they all are. But now it's just part of the post process that as she's creating a post, she selects those different taxonomies that fit, and then it's done. But there was an initial project to make that happen.
Were you air quoting that project?
I was, yes, it was a project.
It was. I'd say that's more than a few nights of the computer on the lap while you're watching House of Cards or whatever.
Exactly. Yes. And I actually, as we're talking about that, I remember the name of the plugin. It's called Custom Post Types UI is the name of the, and that's where you create those custom taxonomies that you can apply to posts. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully this is good information for people that are looking for, I mean, this really does, like you were saying earlier, this really does apply to the users, your users' experience as they're on your site. And I think that's really important to spend a few minutes thinking about. So I think these are good answers.
I would say on a regular basis, when we're looking at real-time analytics, we have people on our recipe search page looking for things.
Wow. That means you're sitting there going, bullseye, we got it. We really helped people solve a problem. So that's got to feel great.
Yeah. Yeah, because anytime you go someplace, you want things to be as easy as possible. Yeah. And so if you find someplace where it's easier than somewhere else, you're going to start going there.
And so some people will have a recipe index on their page where they basically create the categories. I love this because it's kind of letting the user create the category. So that's cool.
Yeah, because usually you're stuck then to just one category.
Right.
You can look at dinner.
Right.
You can look at vegetarian, but you can't combine them. That's where that power is.
Right. Perfect. Okay, cool. So hopefully that's good information for people. I hope they feel inspired. Go to the show notes page if you want to see some of those links. But you and I, Trevor, move on to the next question. Because let's do that. I am really excited about background boards for food photography. And I know that's something that a lot of people have had questions on. There's a lot of great sources for boards. You can actually you can buy them pre-made, or you can, make them yourself. I'm just curious. You want to talk a little bit about what you all do?
We've done both. When we first were starting out, we went to, I think it was Home Depot, and we bought some boards and we painted them, and we had a few different size things. We had some actual boards that we nailed together. We had some it was like thin plywood that we painted. I mean, we've done that. And then we've also purchased boards. We have some Ericsson Woodworks boards. But I've seen people find tile at some place like a Home Depot or Lowe's that works well as a background. There's laminate that works. There are so many options out there.
Yes, I agree. And I feel like you're really only limited by your imagination on this one. You were talking about Home Depot. I mean, also the same is true at Lowe's or whatever place you go to. They have these long, they almost feel like they're, they're tile basically, but they're shaped to look like wood.
Yeah. Yep. Those. Yeah. That's
or there's some that are shaped to look like marble. And I know and they're a lot lighter than wood, and they're a lot lighter than marble. So it's kind of nice to have those as options.
Yeah, because you can't tell in the photo that it's not real. I mean, it looks in general pretty good.
Yes.
And, your mileage will vary depending on what you go with. But I think with all this stuff, I am a huge proponent of don't get hung up on that you've got to have this or that. Really, I mean, there's people who just shoot on a white background. Big blogs that just do that. I mean,
yeah.
Anything. It really doesn't matter. I mean, it definitely can add. Right. I won't say it doesn't add anything. It can definitely add to the shots and help, but don't feel like you need to go and you have to spend $250 on some boards. There are DIY options that are absolutely feasible and can give you great results. So I think that sometimes people think, oh, I've got to spend a ton of money to get this. And like what you're saying with the tiles, there are definitely options where you don't need to spend a ton of cash.
Yes. A can of spray paint, or just paint in general. You could do a lot with creating your own boards. I actually even, I got lucky and we had a farm in southern Missouri. We don't have it anymore, but we did. And there was this great big, huge piece of, it was like maybe a barn, not a whole barn door, but it was a piece of a barn door. Looks gorgeous. We love it. Just there, you can just find things. You can go along the streets and see, gorgeous pieces of wood that you can grab. Garage sales are great.
Secondhand stores. Yes. Yeah, all sorts of places. And you never know, right? You never know what you're going to find. You might just find this. We have like a food tray that we bought somewhere. It was really cheap, but it looked cool, and we shot a bunch of stuff in that. So, and
Yeah.
eventually you're going to get tired of some of the things and want to switch it
Yeah.
up. And
Right.
yeah,
And then another thing is, if you had a few pieces of wood that were new, but they were maybe the right size and the right weight that you wanted to work with, just stick them outside and let them age. Yeah, I swear it doesn't take
Yeah.
long. When they're exposed to sun and cold and rain, it doesn't take long for them to weather.
get some personality.
Get some personality. That's right. Or just start working on it
Character.
yourself and. Character.
Yeah.
We all need character.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
Even our boards need character. But, I've heard of some people who just use, that kind of paper they use at Italian restaurants where they cover the table with paper,
Yeah.
white paper. Mm-hmm. That's another great option because if you stain it, you're shooting a blackberry and the blackberry stains the paper, you just tear that off and roll on to the next sheet. So
Yeah. Parchment paper. People use parchment paper. People use, I mean, there's so many options. You can get creative and play around with it and just have fun with it.
Right. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to include some links as well on the show notes page for a couple of DIYs. You mentioned, who did you mention? Ericsson?
Yeah, Ericsson. I know Ericsson. I don't know all of the other places that
Yeah.
actually create the boards. I know they're a bigger player in the food board world, but they
Yeah.
also take a long time to get the boards. I'm talking like months,
Ah,
like a couple months to get those boards.
who wants to wait for that?
Eh,
I have no patience for that kind of thing.
I don't know patience for that.
Yeah, exactly.
But good for them. But good for them. They're obviously in demand.
I do know, though, that sometimes when you're looking at somebody else's food photography and you may be, a little bit, jonesing for what they've got, you're like, oh my God, that's so cool. I really need to have that. You might be surprised that it's not as, what you see on, if you had it in front of that board in front of you, might look completely different than what it looks like in the photo. So
Yep.
don't feel intimidated by trying to make something yourself. It might be easier than you think.
And somebody might look at your site and say, wow, where did they get that board?
I
You never
know. Yeah. We actually have a reclaimed, I don't remember the name of it right now, but it's basically where if they demolish an old house, you take the leftover products from that house there, and they're all over the Kansas City area, and you can go and look at old wood, and it's fairly cheap too, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, they have those. That's kind of a big thing
movement.
nowadays. I think they have those in a lot of cities. If you're in even a decently sized city, you can probably find some place that has reclaimed wood that they'll either put something. I mean, and some of those places they'll just have the wood, and then you can say, "Oh, I'd like a board, or I'd like a table," and they'll make it for you.
Wow, how cool is that?
And the pricing is going to vary there depending on what you want. But if you just wanted them to slap a few boards together, you'd probably get that for a relatively reasonable price and have something totally unique that no one else is going to have. Yeah, because that's the downside of some of the things like an Ericsson Woodworks is that you have the same board or a very similar board that tons of other people have. So, there's pros and cons to both.
I love it. That's true. I think find something that works for you. Listen to some of these ideas, pick one and go with it, and let us know how it works for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on because I like this next question. It has a lot to do with a question that we answered last month, which is, do you have an email pop-up plugin that you recommend? And I think this is such a great question. We've actually gone through the process of changing ours. And, last month we talked about how Google is really kind of coming down on people who are having those interstitial, did I say that right? Interstitial pop-ups?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
On
mobile.
Yes.
Well, so a quick moment as of when you're watching this, when the air date of this is in January-ish?
Yes.
End of January. Be sure you have removed any pop-ups that you have showing up on mobile, because that's important, because that is now a ranking signal for Google that your site is mobile friendly. If you do not have those pop-ups, if you have those pop-ups, Google is going to consider your site slightly not mobile friendly, which isn't, it's not the end of the world, but it's not going to be great for you for ranking well in Google results. So that's important. Make sure you've turned that off. Now continue.
Yes. Thank
I just
you.
want to make sure that they know, that they get that off. That's important.
So you actually go into the settings of your pop-up and you can choose, like on ours, it was pretty easy. It's like either choose desktop and mobile, or mobile only. And, we just definitely chose just desktop on ours.
So what do you guys use for your email pop-ups?
Well, we went through a process because I was on Lead Pages, and
Okay.
don't get me wrong, I really, really liked Lead Pages, but in some ways I felt like it was, I was driving, it was a Maserati, and I don't know that I really needed that, there was a lot of things I wasn't using.
Yep. That actually just came up. Some people were asking about that. And if you are thinking about Lead Pages, it is excellent.
Yes.
But it makes a lot more sense if you are selling products and you need landing pages and, you're converting sales and doing a lot of that stuff. If you're just looking for a sole email pop-up, it is that's a perfect example. It's a Maserati, and really all you need is a solid Toyota.
Yeah, solid. We don't have to go with the Corolla. We could go with a nicer Toyota.
Right.
But
You could go with the Camry.
Yes,
That's
Camry.
a better one. I don't know. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You go with the Camry.
Let's go with the Camry. I like that. But we don't need
So what did you go to?
Okay. Well, I looked at Opt-in Munster as another one that I looked at.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, really liked Opt-in Munster at the beginning. I have this problem of saying Munster. I'm supposed to say Monster, right? Opt-in Monster, right? Okay.
Right.
It's like, a carryover from watching the Munsters, But anyway,
Right.
Opt-in Monster, I liked it. But then I realized that to be able to do the pop-up on exit, which is what I wanted, that's an extra
Exit
fee.
intent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's like their pro level.
Right. And then it was almost as expensive as Lead Pages. And so we kept looking, and we ended up with, it's called Opt-in Cat.
Ah, okay.
It's different. It's very minimal, but it does, in addition to offering an opt-in pop-up, it also has an opt-in banner that you can have on each blog post, and an opt-in board, or it would be something that would be like on each blog post as well. So you could have probably a banner at the top of for your mobile, small thin banner that says sign up for our newsletter, and then on each post you could have a little box at the bottom. So I kind of like that,
like a form, a form in the inline form.
And it has a lead
the bottom of
magnet
your
delivery feature to it as well. So we've been happy with it so far.
Now, is it a plugin or is it a SaaS service? Like Opt-in Monster has a website that you actually go to create your opt-ins and everything, or is it a plugin that you installed and that you do within your actual WordPress WP admin area?
It is actually a plugin. I probably like the SaaS a little bit better myself personally, but I kind of got I trained myself on it, so it's fine now. But it is a plugin.
Okay.
It gives you stats.
Oh yeah. Okay. So it's got stats and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, we also used Opt-in Monster at one time, but then for similar reasons, I popped off of it, and we actually went with something called Thrive Leads.
Ooh.
Thrive Leads. Now, I will say with Thrive Leads, it is a little more, I want to say the word technical. Like you have to be a little more comfortable getting in to customize things. It's not as point and click as something like an Opt-in Monster, where you go, you create it, and you say, boom, I want on this page, and it's there. It's a little more technical. It's a little more involved. But if you have the time to set it up, it's a one-time, I think it's $70, one-time forever payment,
nice.
Which I really liked.
I like that too.
And it has all those same features. It has exit intent. It has, you can determine what you want on desktop, mobile, banners, all sorts of different pop-ups, and we use a ribbon now, and then there's a form that we use. It can also do those, like if you click on a link and it'll actually pop up, and it integrates with our email service and everything. So we really like that, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're not comfortable getting in and customizing things. If you would not consider yourself really comfortable on the technical side, I'd say maybe go with something else. I don't know. How is Opt-in Cat in that regard?
It's fairly user-friendly. It has several templates from which to choose, but in some ways that's one thing I don't like about it, because I actually would rather get in. I really would like, I like to have a photo of, we have a cover photo of our ebook that we give away. So far we're not able to do that. We're hoping that that's something they're going to add. Are you able to do that with Thrive?
Yeah, I mean, you can really customize that stuff however you want, but I mean, it takes some time to get it to look exactly how you want it to look. So, I mean, everything kind of has their pros and cons, because sometimes to make it really simple, easy, and really user friendly, you
Yeah.
can't have all of that customization of the features because that sort of complicates things. So,
Right.
it's really about finding something that works for you, but you definitely do want a mobile friendly option in whatever opt-in plugin, opt-in service you choose. You want something like that ribbon that shows up on the top or bottom of the
Post.
page on mobile, and then, your other options as well.
And that gives your users at least three ways to interact with you. And you can another thing I liked about Opt-in Cat is you can actually decide how often you want people to get that. So I can say, once a month, once a week. I can choose how often they're going to see
Yes.
that pop in.
Same. Yeah. Yes, same. And I think that's important to use. I would not recommend people just have that pop up every time, always,
Yes.
because then if somebody goes to the first page, they see it, they close it, and they go to the next page, and it's there again, and it's there again. You can get to that annoying place. So yeah, we like to put a period of time in between when that user comes. A cookie will get deposited in their browser, and then when they come 10 days later, then we'll show it to them again. And if they're coming back, then we think, okay, they're more likely to subscribe at this point anyway. So yeah.
Right. So you got to be kind of
Mhm.
careful not to, turn off your most avid users.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you can imagine if you've subscribed and then every time I come to your site, it's still asking me for
I
a thing,
know.
to sign up. It can be a little annoying.
Now, one thing I did like about lead pages, which I imagine Opt-in Monster does this, but I don't know about Thrive Leads, and I know for sure Opt-in Cat doesn't offer it. But I was able to create, for example, what if I had a page on how to make vegan cupcakes or something like that, and I created a
Yep.
nice, beautiful, colorful guide, and I could implant that on specific pages that was related to cupcakes or cakes in general or sweets, and then I could also, people could sign up by clicking on that. It was nice to have that. I don't have that right now. So in addition to the opt-in,
And that converts higher.
yeah, it
If
converts
your
higher.
if
Yes.
your opt-in is post specific instead of just a hey, subscribe to my newsletter. If it's something like you had a dessert, if it's like, hey, get my 10 best desserts by signing up
Yes.
here, that's going to convert better than just a standard thing. So yeah, Thrive Leads does allow you to do stuff like that and actually target to
Oh,
specific post
nice.
categories or specific post types or pages or posts. So yeah, you can do all that stuff. All that
And
stuff.
growing your email list is really a great thing. I think it can lead to a lot of important things. Like if you create a product or a course or a workshop or a webinar or whatever, you can sell to that list eventually, or just more traffic of people coming to your site is good too.
Oh yeah, I mean for us yes, you're completely right. When you create a product, your number one place where you're going to be selling that is if you've developed that email list, but also like you're saying, traffic wise, where
Yeah.
when you send out your newsletter, either when you do a post or weekly, whatever that is, that can generate a good amount of traffic. So
Yeah.
I think it's very, very important to use. For us, for example, our email is our seventh. I'm just looking in the last 30 days. Our email is our seventh biggest traffic driver to the
Wow.
site.
That's
So,
amazing.
that's super valuable.
That is very valuable. And I will just provide a little testimony here. And that is, I had my email list going and I wasn't doing anything with it. And Trevor knows that this because he kind of talked me down off the cliff a little bit. I was a little stressed out. But, I will tell you, it's kind of ridiculous to have a newsletter list, and especially when you reach the point that you're paying money for that list because, your
Hmm.
list is large enough and not be doing anything with it. But I also understand how intimidating it can feel. So just maybe that's a topic we should talk about in a future month, Trevor, and that is,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
ways to address your email list so that, it just,
Yeah.
I will tell you, it feels empowering to have had that nagging at me so long and to now have it fixed. It feels great.
I get it in my email every week. My Marley
Oh, you do?
weekly recipe update. Yeah, of course. Come on. What you talking
That's
about?
so
Come on, Marley. Of course.
I get yours as well.
Yes. And I did want to mention one other thing because I think a lot of people were concerned when pop-ups were going away that people would stop. Like that was obviously a pretty decently converting way of getting email
Yeah.
addresses. With switching to the ribbon, it's not as good as those pop-ups, but ours performs about half as well as the pop-up performed, which I think is actually really good. And I know it's much less disruptive to our users. I mean, I think Google has a point in what they're doing.
I see.
And so I was actually really surprised. It's actually done well. Like people go up and I feel it's a little more, they're actually making the choice to sign up than when it's popped up. And some people, I think, just like, oh, okay, I'll put my email address in. Maybe I have to do that. It's a little more of a decision that they're making when it's in the ribbon on mobile, where they're going up and they're like, yeah, I want to get your recipes. So I think the conversion rate has gone down a little bit, but I feel like the quality is going to go up because it's not a pop-up. So if you want to know stats on that.
No, I really like that. I think that's, I imagine a lot of us would agree that, we hate is a strong word. We'd love having alternatives to the pop-up. It's just that the pop-up has been so productive and so effective, but now that our hands been forced a little bit, coming up with creative ways to grow that list is smart. And I agree with you. I'm glad to find something that's effective.
Yeah, and just because it's good to know that just because the pop-ups have gone away does not mean that people are no longer going to sign up for emails because you can't use that. The ribbons that we use have been converting really well. I'm really happy about it. So
I'm inspired. I'm glad to know that. Okay, so one final question, and this is probably kind of a quick one. So this one is, sometimes when I upload video to Facebook, and we're going to have to talk about Facebook at least sometimes, on each episode. We can't get away from it.
I love it.
Sometimes when I upload video to Facebook, they're fuzzy, not focused. What can I do?
Good question. I mean, so that could be a couple things. The glaring one is you just might not be watching it in HD because depending on what Facebook is determining your connection speed is and or how you have your preferences set up, it might actually be delivering you a lower resolution version than you uploaded. So you can go and do you know where the setting is? I don't know off the top of my head where that is, but you can change what your default viewing setting is, how you want videos to play, and to play in HD if it's available.
So just go into your
that's
settings
one thing you could be.
And click the default to HD if possible, right?
Yeah.
Now, does that mean though that means, okay, so that means it will not be fuzzy on my screen, but does that mean it potentially could be fuzzy on somebody else's screen if they haven't clicked that link?
I mean, I think that the bigger, wider 10,000 foot view of this is that you've been looking at whatever your video is as you've been editing it, putting it together. You're really fixated on every aspect of it. The average user that's coming up, regardless of what they have their video setting at, it's not going to be nearly as bad as people think in their heads that, oh gosh, it doesn't look good at all. Most people aren't going to notice that. They're just kind of watching the recipe and they're not paying attention to it. So in general, I think Facebook does a good job of detecting what the speed is, because what they're trying to do is serve the most appropriate quality of video for the type of connection that you have, unless you have explicitly set that you don't want to watch HD, which I don't know many people who do that. Right. And so sometimes that's better, because what you don't want their experience to be, you can imagine if I start watching a video and 3 seconds in it stops and it's saying buffering, you're just going to move on. Right. So it's better that Facebook serve up a slightly lower resolution that's going to stream cleanly than giving them an HD that won't. So, in my mind, I'm kind of like, don't worry about it. Let Facebook do what it's doing. If you're concerned about what you're seeing, definitely go in and get your preference set correctly so that you're always defaulting to the HD version. But I largely think people worry more than they need to about that.
So I don't know that you know this, Trevor, but I speak your language. I think I'm going to translate for everybody. What you just said is...
Yeah, do it.
Chill out.
Yeah.
Chill out, my people.
Essentially
That's what you said.
Relax. Chill out, my people. Yeah. It is, because we're our biggest critics and we are our harshest critiques. And so, don't worry about that stuff.
Unless you start getting complaints from people that, they can't see it quite right, then it's probably fine, huh?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, if it's, and exactly that, if you're concerned about it, ask someone, be like, hey, take a look at this. Does it look okay to you? And if they say it looks fine, then don't worry about it. Okay, but in general, if you've outputted it in HD and you've uploaded it, it's going to be fine.
Okay, good. I'm taking a deep breath and just chilling out myself. This is good.
Just chill out, Marley. Chill out.
Well, we have a lot more questions, but I think we're going to save some of these for next month because we just keep the questions coming.
Yeah, I love it. This was great.
I love it too. So, okay, I got to ask you one more thing, and that is, did you have any New Year's resolutions that you're working on?
Yeah, we do. Our biggest New Year's resolution for 2017 is we are really going to try to just work. This is going to sound ridiculous, but
Okay.
is to just work Monday through Friday and take the weekends off. We don't do a great job of that. And we've been, this last
Yeah.
2 years and a few months now that we've had the blog, we have just been grinding and not nearly taking enough time for ourselves. So that's our big thing is we need to limit our work to the work week and then kind of try and take the weekends off, take it easy, enjoy our lives.
That is
It's
so
important.
smart, because that way you don't
Yeah.
get so, you're not going to, if you kept up at that, we all have periods where we go through things like that. But, if you keep it up, then you're going to burn yourself out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's our big. How about you? Any big resolutions?
Well, yes, Sean and I have a shared resolution as well, and that is to go see more live music. We love live music, and we've got this great little,
nice.
it's like a hole in the wall bar where they bring in some big name. It's a favorite way to see a band is in those kinds of settings,
Love it. I love
Yeah.
that. That's an
So
awesome
that's one of our
resolution.
goals. Yeah.
I'm going to check in on you every blog talk. I'm going to ask you who you went, who you saw in the last month.
Yeah.
And you in front of everyone are going to have to let them know if you're actually
Ooh.
following through or not.
That feels like
I'm your
pressure.
accountability partner on this. Yeah, I'm your accountability partner. So I'm here for you. I'm your live music sponsor.
Last year we saw Delbert McClinton. Do you know who that is?
I'm horrible with no, I don't.
Oh, okay. See, this is going to be so cool. I'm going to be able to tell you names, and you're going to be like, "What? Who?" No.
Yeah, I like this. Great, you did. You got to see them. Oh my gosh,
That is so cool.
can't believe it.
So yeah, I think it's good to have some goals like that. Obviously, I've got work goals too. I've got workout goals. I've got health goals, but
Yep.
I think it's good to have those personal goals too. So that's what ours is right now.
I love it.
So
I love it.
this has just been a great episode. Trevor, you have anything to add for everybody? Or
I don't. This was awesome as usual. 4 down, 872 to go.
Absolutely.
That's it. I'm putting my foot down at 872. I'm
We're
sorry.
done.
That's it. So that's
Not
I don't know how many years
873.
that is.
That's
I
right.
don't know if I'll be alive in 872 months. I'm not sure. Somebody do the math on it.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Everybody, if you're loving Blog Talk as well, we would love it if you would go to iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. Also, if you could share this episode with your friends, family, cousins, uncles, who knows, anybody that you think might be interested in learning more about food blogging, we would be honored.
Do it.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Trevor. Well, I guess I'll talk to you next month.
I'm counting the days. I'm starting a countdown. I'm counting the days. I'm excited.
Me too. Okay, talk to you later.